Thank you for being here with us!
Hello, I'm Clive Chang, Lincoln Center's Executive Vice President, Chief Advancement and Innovation Officer. Festival of New York continues its summer-long celebration of everything that makes this great city the greatest in the world, inviting residents and visitors alike to honor, grow, rejoice, and give back to New York City. Visit festivalofnewyork.com to learn more about the over 350 partners and countless events that have come together to make this summer so spectacular. Last month, our Chief Artistic Officer, Shanta Fake, sat down with a few partners to talk about the small businesses and the major role that they play not only in the Festival of New York, but also New York City as a whole. Today, we're zooming out to the bigger picture and taking a look at one of the three main pillars of the Festival of New York, and that's comeback. While there's so much to celebrate about New York City, this is a festival that is in large part driven by the spirit of resilience, something that many businesses, cultural institutions, and of course, the great residents of this great city have shown. Many of our partners, including businesses, cultural institutions, et cetera, are the backbone of our city's economy. And not only have they helped our city come back financially, but they also epitomize the best aspects of New York, our diversity, our inclusivity, and our great spirit. This year, the Festival of New York encapsulates just that, the comeback of our great city. Today, I'm joined by Taryn Sacramone, Executive Director of Queen's Theater, Suzette Simon, comedian and founder of NY Laughs, and Skye Greenfield Cohen, co-owner and creative marketing lead of New York staple, Economy Candy, to discuss how Festival of New York galvanizes the city's cultural, economic, and spiritual comeback. Welcome. Thank you for joining me in this wonderful discussion today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so we're talking about comeback today. And many of our organizations represented here actually really epitomize that idea, right? So let's go to you, Skye, and talk about Economy Candy, because I know you've just celebrated your 85th birthday. Congratulations, July 30th, right?
Thank you, yes.
And that marks the founding year 1937. But I know that this organization actually sort of began way before that, right in the beginning of the century. It was a shoe and hat repair store with a candy cart. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little more about the origin story.
Economy Candy was originally a shoe and hat repair shop on the Lower East Side. As the Depression hit and people had less and less money to buy new things, let alone even get old things repaired, the candy cart out front just started really buoying the business. That's what it became. And in 1937, ditched the hats and the shoes, and it was all candy.
Just the candy.
Just the candy.
And so 1937, that means we were really right in the throes of the Great Depression, right? So talk about the spirit of how the candy shop was created and all of the storms that it's weathered in the decades since.
Something really amazing about candy is it's one of those things that people call recession-proof. And that doesn't mean that, that we don't feel economic hardships, but it's inexpensive. It's something you can pop in. You can buy a small piece of candy, penny candy in the 30s, but still, a quarter today. You can get something that just kind of brightens your mood. It perks you up a little bit. That's really, I think, why sticking with the candy in the 30s and since then has been so staying for us and has helped us weather all the craziness of being in New York for over 85 years. World War II, Hurricane Sandy, 9/11. There's been so many dips and valleys throughout the 85 years that we've been here. But we've weathered all of it. We've stayed through all of it. The pandemic most recently is really, the New York community. It's, yes, candy is something that can brighten your day, but there was also a huge push from our neighbors, from local people who were like, we cannot let this institution die. That was just incredibly meaningful and just really touching to be a part of.
Yeah, I imagine now that you're a staple of really the cultural fabric of New York City, the people of New York would just never let you fall, right? So how did the community show up when in times of crisis?
So most recently during the pandemic, we had to close our doors to the public, which historically we've never had to do before. 9/11, Hurricane Sandy, maybe closed for like a day or two as like we kind of just like all got our bearings, but not like this, not for months on end with really no bright spot in sight. Luckily, we had just revamped our website, so it made online ordering really easy for people to order to be shipped to them, so no one really had to leave their houses. They could have that little like brightness of their day inside their homes, and we were also able to do curbside pickup, which was great. Lots of like local New Yorkers would walk by. You know, you would take that like 20-minute pandemic walk where you're afraid to like walk by anybody. You're just kind of like trying to keep to yourself. But we put a little sign on the gate that like you could order online. But yeah, it was really amazing. People in our community supporting us, and then also sending gifts from Economy Candy to their friends, their relatives, members of their support staff. You know, outside of the city. So we really gained all these new loyal fans and customers throughout the pandemic nationwide, which is very exciting as well.
Yeah. And tell us about your involvement with Festival of New York and what Economy Candy did as part of the greater movement for the city.
So Economy Candy turned 85 this year. We threw ourselves an amazing birthday party. It coincided with the Festival of New York, which is perfect because part of the goal of our birthday party was not just to celebrate ourselves and this milestone and this achievement, but also celebrate the Lower East Side and New York as a whole, that we've all survived not only the pandemic, but there's so many small businesses, especially in our neighborhood, that definitely deserve that recognition and have definitely been hurting over the last, 2 years now? So many stores closing, so many empty storefronts. Lower East Side is not what it was a few years ago. So to really just bring people back into the neighborhood, to reinvigorate our neighbors, our whole community.
Yeah. Well, thank you for continuing to supply us with fuzzy peach rings, which is my personal favorite. I'm sure we all have our favorites here. And Taryn, let's turn to you. I know it must have been quite difficult when the pandemic hit and Queen's Theater had to shutter its doors. But Queen's Theater as well has a storied history, founded really as a part of the World's Fair in 1964.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your origin story.
Yeah, we are part of the New York State Pavilion, our building is. So it was the Theaterama. I don't know who gives up that name, but it was
Yes, right.
the Theaterama. Wrapped with contemporary art, and the inside of the building had films in a 360 view that showed images from around New York State. It's next to those big towers, so if people are unfamiliar with the park or the New York State Pavilion, it's the Men in Black towers that people might know. We're at the base of that. And so it had, post 64, 65, a couple of different lives before Queen's Theater became, the owner and operator of the space, partnered with the city of New York and operates in that building in 1989. So we're 33 seasons in now, Performing Arts Center. We have 3 theater spaces within the building, 472-seat main stage, 90-seat studio, 60-seat cabaret. So we're able to do very diverse programming, which is fitting for the borough that we serve.
The most diverse borough in all of New York, right?
Yes, some say the planet, right? More than 200 languages spoken daily, and it's an incredible place to be.
And so take us through when the pandemic hit and the challenges you faced, and especially now as we all, right, reemerge.
Yeah.
What have you done specifically at Queen's Theater to really celebrate that resurgence and the comeback?
Yeah, it was interesting. We, like many cultural institutions, pivoted to online programming, very similar to what you were saying of how do we serve and connect people with people while our doors were closed.
Yeah.
And then last summer, we took that next step and did more outdoor programming than we'd done in past years. So we felt like people wanted to be back in community, but not necessarily inside doors, and had a stage outside in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, and found that to be just so unbelievably rewarding to be reconnecting with audience members in person and getting little notes. An audience member wrote that the minute that Dorrance Dance started performing on the stage, they burst into tears, not realizing how much their humanity had missed the arts.
Yes.
It was like remembering a part of themselves that they had, had distance from while having to be at home. So it was all very, validating that people still wanted to come out and be in community and have these live experiences. And so this year, We've continued to have this expanded toolkit, right, and do things online, outdoors, but also within our doors. And as part of Festival of New York, we had a community drum circle outside by the Unisphere, but then also presented Fela the concert within our main stage theater that night. So it's this sort of evolution, right? Doors back open, people coming back indoors.
And I'm so glad you talked about the role of art in humanity, because I think in normal times we start to take that for granted, right? And it's in times when we don't have it anymore that the community really realizes what kind of a role that really plays in our lives, right? Even when you think about when you can't gather to mourn your loved ones, and the role that art and music plays in those kinds of rituals.
Absolutely.
Weddings, right? The number of weddings that were canceled. And going back also to the spirit of the World Fair, that was really about giving optimism and hope and community. And
peace through understanding. The theme was literally peace through understanding.
And I imagine those pillars those themes still carry through to today in your programming, right?
No, it's part of the sort of the DNA and the heritage of the facility, and having an arts and cultural center that's meant to reflect and celebrate our community, which would be very different had the very international World's Fair not happened where we are. So, and we're also in this cultural hub with the Queen's Museum nearby, the New York Hall of Science, the Queen's Botanical Garden. So we also sort of feed off of each other's contributions to the cultural landscape of that area.
And can you speak a little bit about how the movement that was the Festival of New York contributed to your own comeback, and also potentially some collaborations and connections that you made through the festival that you otherwise maybe wouldn't have?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what has been beautiful to see through the pandemic and what the Festival of New York extended was this idea of community, people coming together. And I think that sometimes people can see whether it's cultural spaces or small business spaces as being, maybe competitors with each other, and not realize how interconnected we are, how invested we are in each other's success. And so I think Festival of New York, the idea of bringing together this really diverse array of contributors to New York City's life and saying we are all invested in each other, and that anybody who is in New York is benefiting from the efforts of all of these people, and likewise, all of these people are there to serve them. I think it's just a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Very well said. And Suzette, let's turn to you, because I think laughter is one of those antidotes to all of those terrible, challenging, sad things happening around the world. And certainly NY Laughs really helps to bring a dose of just that to New York City and to our community. So tell us about NY Laughs, your origin story, and how you participated in the Festival of New York.
Well, of course. Well, NY Laughs is a nonprofit comedy organization, performing arts organization. It's unlike anything that exists. We are about trying to promote and deepen an appreciation of the art of stand-up comedy. And like anything, the way that it started was, like anything comedy, it started very selfish and self-motivated. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to be a comedian, and so I was like, well, I'll just go into the subways and begin to perform. And everything was great, except there were a few critics. They were called cops, and they kept kicking me out. So I was like, I'm going to take this to the parks of New York City, which is great because, picnics actually suck in subways. So I started to do stuff in the park, and again, it was just me and a few other comedians, but it was horrible because it was me. Like, I wasn't a comedian, really. And so we hired our first professional comedian, and that's when the vision came, because New Yorker State, but it wasn't just any New Yorkers, it was all kinds of New Yorkers. It was old, young, it didn't matter what you were. I mean, like, they stayed and they were off their phones, and it was such a great sense of community, and it just fueled my passion. So from that moment on, it was always the hustle. It was like 4 jobs. It was like, do I pay rent this month or whatever? But it's always been, for the most part, a seasonal organization. Like, we were always focused on the park. I mean, like, if you look at me now, when I started, I was like AirPod white, and now look at this head. I mean, so it's been like years and years of like this sort of seasonal thing. And then I got a little bit more serious when we got about 10 years, within our 10th year, we began to partner with the Brooklyn Museum and started to try to find venues where we could do stuff indoors. So from there, we've just been just trying to hustle, we don't have a resident theater, so still we're very, very seasonal. What partnerships mean everything. And so when, we got involved with the Festival in New York, we were like, hell yeah. It's like, you have no idea, like, how many people I was calling Make Music New York. I was calling like Snug Harbor in Staten Island. I was trying to see, like, like up in the Bronx, we wanted to do something in the Bronx. And, I've been calling like Ponce Bank and just, just a whole list of numbers and council members. And I mean, it's just like so exhilarating to be able to to look at a Zoom call and like see like 350 people that I admire in the city that have done everything in the arts. And so it's like a smorgasbord. It's just an exciting like cultural smorgasbord. So so that's a little bit about our background. When the pandemic came, like there was nothing. We couldn't do anything because there were a lot of like rogue comedy shows happening, but we had to stay legit. Like we weren't getting park permits or anything like that. And so a bit of an eye opener was that even though all these rogue shows were happening, like I felt like there was just so much focus put on the importance of comedy at that time. You know what I mean? Like, I think that everybody thought, like, my little thing was, like, kind of a novelty, but the ongoing support wasn't there because we'd, like, disappear because we were seasonal. It's like, we were like that boyfriend that comes back into town, you know what I mean? It's like, good times, like, hey, I'm back in town, it's summer, let's hang out, let's have a good time. And then by the time September called, it's like, I'm going out for cigarettes, and then you never, you never see that boyfriend again until next year. So then the pandemic came, and then, like, everybody, like, I think realized the importance of performance and community and getting back together. And so I think that was like the catalyst. The next step was, the openness, and there was like this sort of opening at Lincoln Center, like this sort of like welcoming of like, we need to nurture all of this like pent up creative energy that's out there that's going on with these organizations. And we were able to like get our foot in the door, and
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And Suzette, I know I was very happy to hear you talk about how much you were able to take advantage of all of the Zoom squares, right? And how much outreach you did, which is, I think, exactly what the purpose and the spirit of the festival movement was. And I'm sure your wish list still continues, right? We were very lucky at Lincoln Center to be able to collaborate with this summer, and I know several others were too. But are there others on your wish list? If you had it your way, if you were to pick 10 more, what other kinds of organizations? Would you want to do a show at a candy store maybe, right?
I mean, true, yeah. I mean, like, we're looking for something, because, again, we're sort of a seasonal thing, and so to have even that little space, that garage space at Lincoln Center, that was like a dream come true, like to have walls, finally, walls and a ceiling and air conditioning or whatever. It was just nice to have something under our feet besides turf. So I mean, like, I'd love to be able to work with museums and theaters. I mean, we've done, Brooklyn Museum. I mean, it'd be great to, like, the Met has a performance, they sponsor performances. I mean, it'd be great to do something with the Met, other, and other sort of quirkier things too, Economy. Like, we are open to anything that, has walls. Too.
Yes.
Yeah, we've actually hosted comedy shows before, so if you're interested.
Okay, good. That's good
amazing.
To know. Yeah.
I think the common denominator that we've all been talking about here is community. And in that spirit, and taking a look into the future, I mean, let's think about comeback, and let's think about what we would like to see coming out of the pandemic in the next 3, 4, 5 years. So when you think about what in New York will have changed as we emerge from this over the coming years, as we rebuild, as we resurge, what comes to mind? What would you personally like to see in the city?
I'll say this. Speaking from the cultural sector, we really came together. In March of 2020, I was the chair of the Cultural Institutions Group and started a daily call for the 34 members of the CIG, and they're located across the 5 boroughs, different scale of institution discipline. And those first calls, we were talking about how to get hand sanitizer and what was the lobby signage going to look like. And then 3 days later, we were all shut down, right? So the world was looking very different day to day, and the calls opened up, and people who were not members of the CIG started to join. The calls continue today. There's a list of more than 1,000 cultural leaders who participate in them, and I co-lead it with Lucy Sexton from New Yorkers for Culture and Arts and Sade Lithcott, the CEO of National Black Theater and the chair of the Coalition of Theaters of Color. The relationships that people have built with each other, the things that we've been through together, it is unbelievable to me how many people I consider to be close friends and colleagues who I did not know pre-pandemic. And so those relationships resulting in just, support and, deeper roots and people that you can lean on and shared resources in real time, I think is going to have a lasting impact moving forward. So that's very exciting to me. And then an appreciation for things that we might have been taken for granted a little bit. So whether it's being able to walk in and browse the candy, I don't need to browse, I know what I want, but
there are 2,000 plus choices here, Sure.
Or getting to laugh, and not like at home consuming it, but like it's fun to laugh when you're home and you're seeing a funny video or something like that. But to hear a stranger's laugh, those pleasures, are things that I hope that we don't take for granted. And then I think we need to just remember those things and lean into what we have discovered that we appreciate. And also to your point about inclusivity, right? There's also a real awakening over, by sector and within individuals and institutions about questioning whether we are truly the inclusive society that we think we are. Yeah. And I think that will have positive, lasting impact.
Absolutely. Plus one on the carrying through the collaborations that began as a part of our necessitation of holding hands, right, to get through together. But now let's just do that on our own accord and not out of necessity, and let's carry all of that forward, right? What about you, Skye?
Yeah, I think the importance of community above all else is something that we've all been woken up to, and we've all spoken about that so far this afternoon, that without our neighbors, without our community, where would we be? And that's something that I'm sure we all took just for granted before this. We never really thought of it as oh no, what happened if they all went away? Because they were just always there. And then, gosh, at the shop, we've been around for 85 years. So there are customers that come in and they remember my husband's grandparents. They remember when my in-laws were pregnant with my husband. They know when we got married. They know so much about us. They're part of our family as well. But we don't know their names. Yeah. These aren't people, we don't know where they live. These are people that just come in regularly, and we have these relationships with them, and they have relationships with us, and just how important that is, and how much that was missed for those months and months when we couldn't have those little, I don't even know what to call them, just that human connection, that's a moment in time, fleeting. I think that we just appreciate it so much more than we did before, and realize how important it is. And hopefully, moving forward, I now I know some people's names. It's to hold on to it a little bit more than we did before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love that. Suzette, what about you?
Well, I say we need more Festival of New York going forward. Because the thing is, I'm a small nonprofit, and I'm actually sort of a unicorn even in comedy. There aren't. In New York, there's very few live comedy producers. To me, I felt as if working with Lincoln Center actually gave me actually just kind of validated my voice in what I was doing and my vision, and so I'm very, very thankful for that, and I really want that to continue. I feel like Lincoln Center and the Festival of New York helps to amplify the small person that's been working for years in their field doing something that is culturally related that hasn't been recognized or or seemed unimportant. And I felt like that this has kind of really been a way to amplify that. And so I say more Festival of New York. I think that it can only get better, right? It can only grow and it can only get better. And I just imagine a better future for all of us if we have this kind of coalition going on.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. For our 85th anniversary or birthday celebration, we really partnered with a lot of other small businesses in our neighborhood to create specialty economy candy treats, donuts and cookies, and even shots and cocktails, because there's so many bars and restaurants on the Lower East Side, and just that kind of neighborhood coming together where we can celebrate just everyone who wants to come by. It's truly just a celebration of New York and all that New York has to offer, all that a neighborhood has to offer. And I think the Festival of New York really amplified that and really motivated a lot of people to do those kinds of things throughout the 5 boroughs, to have those, yes, we're celebrating New York, we're celebrating this area of New York, we're celebrating this business, we're celebrating this community. It's just so amazing.
Love that. I'm sure we all have some ideas of how we can make the Festival of New York as a movement better. What could be provided that could amplify all of these efforts? What's been missing in the equation and in the fabric? anything you'd like to see it as the movement starts to grow, as we think about sort of the next steps, how we plan for Festival of New York 2023 and beyond?
Economy Candy was a late add-on to Festival of New York. We were looped in by Tony's Chocolonely. It's an amazing chocolate brand. They, aside from making amazing chocolate, they are fair trade. They're chocolate bars instead of like a Hershey bar where it's all the same size square. Each piece is a different size to represent the inequality of the cocoa trade, to just really bring home that awareness about like what you're eating, where it's being sourced. And we had talked to them about our 85th, and they're like, you have to join Festival of New York. You have to, get involved with this. It's everything you're saying about wanting to celebrate the community, wanting to celebrate your neighbors. Like, that's what this festival is. And I wish that we had known about it earlier in the year. I wish that once we did become involved, that there was more to get involved in. I wish I know that in the future that there will be more, and that's just so exciting.
Yeah.
It's always like that when things launch, though, right? And then now there's the framework and the understanding and something to build on there. I would love to see, the partners and sponsors and helping the smaller nonprofits to execute projects. So I think some funding sources that would complement it. I think that one of the things for cultural organizations that came out of the pandemic was Open Culture, which was a program that allowed organizations to self-produce outside. And that legislation had, that policy had expired, but now there's movement to bring Open Culture back. So if Open Culture's back, that provides more areas in the city that can be activated, more public spaces that can be activated. So money and space.
Money and space.
Always.
Always, yep.
Well, I would say, money definitely, because we are a small nonprofit. But I just thought logistically, I thought that as a small nonprofit, I handle the social media pretty much myself. But so that was sort of a little bit daunting. But what happened was I ended up coming through my email was an application for the Summer Youth Employment Program. The city actually has a program where they provide high school students with internships with your organization or your business. And I just think that that is fantastic. And it would be, and a lot of these interns are interns of color. And so I think that it's a great introduction into the arts. I think I had 2 interns, and I think that they were fascinated that all they got to do all day long was like look at pictures and make social media and be on your phones. And they were just so excited about that aspect of it. Like, they didn't do anything different than what they do otherwise. But I think that to be able to have some sort of support, like maybe have a bunch of interns come in that are specifically working to make sure that the social media gets cultivated among smaller organizations, that sort of support thing, and then you would also be involving all of these kids that are, maybe have never experienced the arts, and now they're involved in the arts, and it might lead them to new ideas about their futures and what they can do. So maybe some social media support so that the message of the Festival of New York continues to get out.
The storytelling.
And they get paid.
Yeah, they get paid
the city
too.
Pays them. The organizations don't pay them. It's great.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for joining us today for another discussion on our city's comeback and how the Festival of New York is bringing everyone together through collaboration and community. We thank our guests today and all of our 350+ coalition members for their dedication and love for our city. For more information about how you can participate and attend events, please check out festivalofny.com and on your social networks.